I took the mantra a couple years ago that I work for my team, right? My team doesn't work for me. I
Yeah.
love being that guy that they can come to and they say, look, Calvin, I think we can make this better. Or hey, Calvin, I think we have a gap here. I love them leading the charge so they take ownership of
Mhm.
their responsibilities and of the service that they provide to our clients. And I love solving that problem.
Today I'm speaking with Calvin Davis out of Key Renter, Richmond. Calvin is a great business owner. He started his company in 2017 and has scaled it to about 275 doors in Richmond, Virginia. He actually has an interesting background. He came from the vendor side of property management and eventually decided he wanted to open up his own property management company and then went ahead and did so with the Key Renter property management franchise. Calvin is going to share his experience, what he's learned along the way, and much more during this interview. So I suggest sticking around to the end. Not only that, we're going to go into what does he do with his cash flow that he earns from the business? Where does he actually reinvest that money aside from just in his business? So let's get straight to it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So my background, I started in sales. I've been in sales my entire life. Um, Started selling shampoo. I know that's a little odd thing for me to sell, considering I don't have any hair at this point in my life. But I started there and I jumped over into software. And part of that journey was a leasing lead management and scheduling system called Tenant Turner. And while I was there, I got introduced to property management. I was running around in the NARPM conference circles, talking to property managers, and I realized that there's a huge opportunity in the real estate space and the property management space. The way that Tenant Turner got started and being a startup, I was exposed to so many different companies, so many different software solutions, and I loved it. About the same time that I jumped from a company called Snag a Job over to Tenant Turner, my family was growing. My wife and I were having our first kid. We were in a small startup home, and I started looking at investment properties and just scoured YouTube for hours to figure out how can I keep this place and make a little bit of money off of it. And somehow the stars aligned, and we were able to keep our house while we moved into another house that was more suitable for a growing family. And that was the start of it, man. I was hooked at that point. I realized I could get a tenant to move into the property, to maintain the property, make a little bit of money off of it. And I realized as I had switched over to Tenant Turner that there's the potential to make a business out of it, right? And I always knew I
Yeah.
wanted to be in real estate. I always knew that I wanted to be a business owner, but this was the first time in my life, in my professional career, where I kind of saw a light at the end of the tunnel, and I decided to pursue it. And it's been a blessing, man. It's been a beautiful journey. Not always easy, but beautiful.
Yeah, definitely not always easy, but I don't think anything worth pursuing is that easy, right?
Preach.
So what did that look like? Did you keep buying properties and eventually had multiple before you started to before you decided to make the switch to full time? Or can you take us a little bit through what that transition looked like?
Yeah, so I stayed with Tenant Turner for a few years, and I was always looking for opportunities to acquire more investment properties. I stayed in the single family space and bought a couple off market, bought a couple all cash, and did the Burr method. But I was always looking for those opportunities. And I put that on pause for the last 5 or 6 years, my direct acquisition of investment properties to invest my time back into this business. My focus was growing Key Renter, period. So that's been my primary focus, but I have over the past 12 months shifted and expanded into both running a maintenance company that ties directly into the property management company and became a part of a REIT with three other property management owners here in the state of Virginia. And we focus on acquisitions as well. So I haven't jumped back into the direct investment space because my time has been focused elsewhere.
Yep.
But through the REIT, we've started to acquire additional properties at this point.
Gotcha. So now you're back on the property acquiring train. But I guess my question was like when you first started,
Yeah.
were you buying up multiple properties and then decided to make the switch full time, or did you have
No,
like one or two and decided at that point like I want to open up my own property management company?
I had a handful of properties at that point, and it just as I was in the the tenant turner space, I was going to NARPM conferences, and I was introduced to key renter franchise systems
Yeah.
and Nate Pugh and Aaron Marshall, and I didn't necessarily have the intention of opening a property management company, but I had seen the opportunity in it through my work at Tenant Turner and how I could transition from just being an individual investor to that monthly recurring revenue model of managing properties. And just through that relationship with Nate and Aaron, I realized that this is an opportunity I could absolutely pursue and they could make happen. So I did kind of table the individual investments at that point and then started to pursue opening up that franchise through Aaron and Nate with Key Renter.
And what is it that made you want to go the franchise route versus just starting up your own, brand name essentially?
Yeah, I wasn't ready to jump into full-on business ownership at that point yet, and I saw Key Renter as a true partner. And I had a unique perspective at Tenant Turner of being exposed to all the different solutions that were popping up within the property management space, all the software, all the support, all the third-party vendors that were attending all these different conferences. And because I had that relationship with a lot of those different vendors and was learning about their solutions and how other management companies were leveraging them, I saw that Key Renter was using some of the top software solutions for property managers, and they just packaged it, bundled it all together, and had the support system in place to where I could continue pursuing Tenant Turner. I really enjoyed working with James, Brandon, and Chris. Loved that company to death and loved the idea of taking it from a startup to a well-established name within the property management space. But I also saw the opportunity with property management and that Key Renter would provide that opportunity to open up that business. And I had all the support I needed. So one night I was sitting on the couch, I was talking to my wife, and I didn't I didn't think that she would be open to, leaving our traditional jobs and opening a management company. And I said, just think about it. And the next day when she woke up, she said, let's do it.
Really?
So, yeah, I called Nate, called Aaron, and said, "We're in. What do we need to do?" And fortunately for us, man, they helped us on this journey, and we haven't looked back since.
That's awesome. That's it took the leap of faith and it worked out.
Yeah,
Very cool.
absolutely, man. Head
Very cool.
first.
Yeah. What was your growth strategy at first? So obviously, you're starting out, you have a couple properties that you manage, that you own. But at this point, from what I gather, you don't have any third party properties, right? How do
Nope.
you go from literally, okay, I've just bought into a franchise, I am now Key Renter Property Management Richmond, and I have zero doors? What is it that took you to that point where, okay, now this is a viable business, okay, now we have our first 100 doors? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, man. It was blind faith and trust in the process. I did a ton of local networking. I bought into all property management.
When you say local networking, just to make sure that's super clear, like, can you give us some examples on that?
Realtors, brokers, insurance agents, mortgage brokers. I went to investment meetups, anywhere where anybody would talk to me that was remotely related to properties, to real estate.
Yeah.
I had my cards and I talked to them, tell them what I was doing. Period. Anybody that would talk to me.
Were you like
Um,
offering them something to get them to actually listen to you, or was it just like build like a good relationship, show you're a decent human being, and
Yeah. Yeah. And really, what I often did was learn a little bit about them, see if there was something I could help with, right? Was there some
yeah,
guidance I could provide? Was there some support? Was there an introduction that I could make just to prove myself and build my reputation up? And that was slow going at first, a lot of awkward conversations, a lot of times where, you're kind of shooed off to the side because I was the new guy in town. But that ended up serving me very well. Just creating relationships, shaking hands, kissing babies, just being at all of those places, right? My name started to get out there and people started to recognize me. They started to trust me because they knew if I didn't have a solution for them, I could at least introduce them to somebody that may be able to guide them or may be able to help them with whatever they were working through. So it was a lot of local networking. A lot of it was at the very, very beginning, it was the pay per lead section.
yeah.
And that didn't work out very well. My close rate was absolutely abysmal with those leads, and the cost of it was really high. So I
It,
transitioned
I
away
I
from that.
imagine it ended up kind of being a race between you and your competitors in terms of who can get them the quickest on the phone and who can charge the least, right?
If they were even a viable lead.
Yeah,
Oftentimes the leads that came through there weren't even true leads. It may have been a tenant looking for a property or
gotcha.
somebody considering buying some property. So it wasn't even a true valid lead at that point. So I found myself chasing my tail with those solutions, and I stepped away from them pretty quickly. Uh, Really, the two things that worked best for me was just actively engaging with the website and getting reviews through Google.
Yeah,
Anybody that I could provide support to, anybody that I could help, and all those people that I said I was networking with locally, and I'd always ask them, "Hey, you mind hopping on the website and engaging with it? You mind, writing us a review, letting them know how I may have helped you, or how I may have supported you, or how I may have guided you." And that ended up being enough leads for me to to just start those conversations. And that was absolutely critical because a lot of competitors, at least in this market here, they don't even answer the phone when leads call. So I was answering the phone. I was replying to chat that was popping up on the website 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And people were saying, wow, you're actually replying to me. This is a person replying to me at this point. And I said, yeah. And that was how I really started to build some momentum. And that got me up to about 100 doors. About 120 is when I started looking at some marketing partners and really started putting some dollars behind that. But it was the Google review. It was very early on the paper lead sites, local networking, and then just engaging with people, answering the phone, calling people back quickly. It's amazing how many leads you can close just by answering your phone.
yeah. It's something we're seeing more and more. Property management companies trying to automate everything to the point where you get on their website, you're talking to a robot. One thing I will say with property management is it's a people business,
Yeah,
right? Whoever is trusting you to manage their property, this is likely the largest asset that they own. Oftentimes, it might be their entire life savings. And if they're going to go to your website and then get sent to like an automated bot that probably can't even answer half the questions properly, there's a
yeah,
very good chance you're going to lose that lead. So just like what you're saying, I think that's a really valuable lesson for all property managers out there. You need to have that personal touch, and it's going to help your close rate tremendously.
absolutely.
So yeah, definitely. I think you're doing something right there. Sometimes it sounds so simple, but you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't don't do that. They don't go that extra mile to actually speak with each lead that comes through. So
Right.
that's super important. I guess once you got now, so you said now that you got to 100 doors or 120, then you started putting more marketing dollars behind things. Obviously, we're involved in that, so I know what goes on there. But aside from the marketing standpoint, what problems did you start to encounter as you grew? Like once you hit that 100 door mark, let's say, how did things start to shift?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really fortunate in that I had my wife who's extremely intelligent, extremely business savvy. Her and I were working together. So we didn't have to hire as early as most property management companies that are trying to scale had to hire. But when I did hit that first, hey, we need to get somebody in the door. We had two young kids, right? We had a ton of support or activities and things that we were going to for the kids, and just life was coming at us fast. And I'll never forget the first guy that I hired was a phenomenal dude, and I gave him absolutely zero training. I just threw him right into the fire, and I realized that I need some support behind this. I need to train this guy. I need to give him the right tools, the right solutions. He hasn't been here from the ground up. And trying to hire, although I had a coach at the time and they were working me through it, for some reason it just didn't click, my man. I did not understand how to actually give my new hire the support that he needed to be successful in the role. And he ended up getting burnt out after a few months. He lasted maybe 6 months, but now looking back on it, I see that 3 months in, my man was beat. He was done. He was not in property management as hard as it is, even if you have the right support and right tools and things in place. So hiring was absolutely the piece that was looking back now, just my biggest swing and a miss. The second one was the vendor network. I started out with a few really good relationships with my vendors, and they could support me up to a certain degree. But once I hit that threshold of those work orders coming in and some of these bigger jobs coming in where my handyman or contractor couldn't handle it, and I had just a couple specialty vendors on the side, I was really struggling to bring new vendors in and standardize the way we were working with them, right? Everybody had little exceptions. Everybody had little different things, or they wanted paid every couple of days versus every 2 weeks versus every month, and tracking all those exceptions and things for the vendors and making sure I was giving them everything they needed, making sure my employees were given everything that they needed. That was a bigger challenge than I thought. My understanding or my assumption at that point was these vendors are just going to grow with me. They're going to want to hire more guys and hire more technicians. And some vendors just didn't want to do that, right? It was just Chuck in his truck who he was happy just taking a couple work orders a day and handling them. And then the final one was standardizing my management agreement and the services that came along with it. While I was getting started, I would make little exceptions here or there for this client or this client, or I'd take on maybe a small apartment building versus the majority of my portfolio being single family residences. And I'd take on this one unique piece of this property over here where it was maybe a garage with an apartment, but the owner still lived in the property. We've all heard the crazy stories where owners just want these exceptions. And at first, I thought a property is a property is a property. If it's a door, bring it on. And what I realized about the 120 door mark was it made more sense for me and my goals and my company to specialize in one thing instead of trying to be a a jack of all trades, be a master of one. So we really nailed down our management agreement, we nailed down our services, we nailed down our pricing, and right now we're at about 275 single family residences, right? We don't mess with small apartment buildings. We have a couple duplexes, a couple triplexes, but we know what works. We standardize that onboarding process, standardize that management to where when somebody comes on, we can set the proper expectations with them. Our team knows how to manage each and every property in a standard way. And those three things, looking back, were those were the challenges that I believe have helped us build the system that we've got now.
Yeah, and that's the key to actually being able to scale, right? When you're at 20 doors and you get a new property that comes on, but it doesn't fit your perfect property type, you're going to be that much more willing to go out of your way to try to make things work because you're desperate for that revenue.
Yeah,
But what you quickly realize is if I'm making these exceptions over and over, there's no way for me to scale. It's one thing when you're doing all the work, but especially as you start bringing on staff, you need to have like very clear standard operating procedures. If this happens, this is how we handle it, right? So going exactly with what you said, like if you don't standardize everything, you're going to, although at first it'll help you grow your revenues, in the long run, it's going to hinder them because you're not going to
absolutely.
be able to handle all the work and you're going to be running much less efficiently than you should be.
Absolutely. Now, I've had people come back and say, well, would you do it differently? Right. Bringing on such a wide
Yeah.
scope of properties. And, I wouldn't. I learned so much by bringing on those properties, and I created relationships and built a network. And although it may not have ultimately been the right solution for us or for them at the time, I'm better for it, they're better for it, and I wouldn't have changed the way that I took on some of those properties that were really unique now knowing what I know and learning what I've
Yeah.
learned.
That's fair. That's interesting. I guess at the time it was the right thing to do. It helped
Right.
you kind of get your bearings, and then eventually you're like, okay, now I'm ready to build a machine that and these
Yeah.
properties don't fit into that machine.
Yeah. There are no accidents, man. So
Yeah.
I took it and ran with it.
Cool, cool. So what does a typical day look like for you now? Obviously, when you first started, it sounds like you were kind of doing everything, but what's your typical standard day for Calvin? Wake up and take us from there.
Yeah. Man, I'm up at about 5. I do a daily devotional, I do a morning meditation, I do some reading in the morning. Cook some breakfast for the family, right? Son loves eggs, wife loves French toast, daughters love pancakes. I don't do all three of those things every day, but I'll switch it up a little bit, make sure they're good, make sure they're set, drop off the kids, and then I get to the office early. Go through my emails, right? Make sure that anything pressing, anything that needs priority is taken care of. But the primary objective I have throughout my day now is making sure that my team is supported, making sure they have the right tools in place, making sure all the systems that we have, the processes that we're leveraging are all working to the maximum that they can have, that they can work. You know, I took the mantra a couple years ago that I work for my team, right? My team doesn't work for me. I
Yeah.
love being that guy that they can come to and they say, look, Calvin, I think we can make this better. Or hey, Calvin, I think we have a gap here. I love them leading the charge so they take ownership of
Mhm.
their responsibilities and of the service that they provide to our clients. And I love solving that problem. Um,
What does that look like? Do you have a daily meeting with them or is it just open door policy? How does that work?
So Monday morning we have what I call our Monday motivational, which is a tad cheesy, right? But it is what it is. So our day goes from 9 to 4 is our office hours Monday through Friday. So on Monday I give them an extra 15 minutes in the morning from 9 to 9:15 to just check email, get some coffee, relax. Maybe they scan through their emails real quick to see if there's anything pressing that they need.
Yep.
At 9:15 we'll do our standard pull up. So every day we have a pull up where we're just going through the quick hitting three, four things, tasks, responsibilities that we've got on the agenda for today. And if there's any unique circumstances that anybody needs some help with, right?
And
We want to
is
make
your whole team in office? Are they
no,
virtual?
no. So
Everyone.
we've got let's see, we've got a leasing agent in office, we got a business development manager in office, we got a property manager in office, and we've got me in office. By Friday of this week, we'll have an offer letter go out for an assistant property manager. So
Awesome.
that'll be five in office, and then we've got three remote team members. And I've got a screen in our pull-up room that we throw the remote team members up, so they're included in the pull-up each day. And that's typically about 10 to 15 minutes. But on Monday, I've got a breakdown of something that we train on every single week, right? And it could be a quick, some law has changed, or our lease has been adjusted, or our property management agreement has changed, or we saw a unique situation or scenario that popped up that I talked through how we identified it, what our solution in place for it is, and what we're going to do moving forward. Just to take a couple minutes to keep the team up to speed on the industry, right? And what we're doing, being the size that we are and just having the people in place that we have, I love taking that opportunity to just explain to everybody what's going on. I feel as though they can provide a better service, they can grow if they have that insight into some of the other areas of the business. So
Awesome. I,
that's
I imagine that that team meeting also probably produces ideas, right? Your staff probably comes to you with ideas to help you guys improve. It's just like a really good brainstorming session.
There's the potential for that, but really where I see that is in our department meeting. So we've got a PM meeting on Tuesday morning, a sales meeting on Wednesday morning, and then our leasing meeting on Thursday morning. And
How on that subject, how intentional are you with these meetings? Like, is it, it's from this time to this time, we won't go a minute past that, and like these are the exact agenda items we're going to speak about? Because meetings sometimes can end up being a huge
death by
waste of time, right?
Death by meeting. So it's set aside. We have an hour set aside, but very rarely do we hit an hour long,
Okay.
which I give that time back to the team. So we have two primary items that we review. Number one, we have a metric worksheet that the team is responsible for filling out on Monday of every week. So they'll take all the metrics from the prior week and they'll fill it out on Monday. Then when it comes time for our team meeting, we'll sift through those metrics.
What type of metrics are you guys looking at?
So
Just an
on
example.
Yeah, the property management side of the house, since we had that today, we'll look at how many work orders we have open. We'll look at how many work orders we closed in the last week. We'll look at how many work orders we have open past 21 days. We'll look at how many work orders we have open for vacant properties versus occupied properties.
Okay.
And what it does is that allows me to track trends on how many properties we have under management, how many are occupied, how many turns we've taken. And then, you start to get into that yellow and red category when you have work orders that have been open past 21 days. So we'll look at that specific metric and we'll say, all right, why are these open so long? Is the tenant giving us problems in accessing the property? Do we not have the right vendor in place to take care of this problem? Is the owner not approving whatever estimates we're putting in front of them? So that's when we start to look at those specific scenarios that pop up. We
Yeah.
can talk through them, put solutions in place for that situation. And then if we start to see themes, right, we can make adjustments in the sales process and the onboarding process to make sure that those problems and challenges we're seeing get diminished over time.
Okay, got it. Interesting. One thing that just kind of pops into mind right now is a big topic lately has been owner churn.
Yeah,
Obviously, to grow, you have to add doors, but you also have to keep your existing owners. Do you
yeah.
guys have anything specific in place to minimize owner churn? Are you guys doing anything like in particular to strengthen the relationship you have with your existing owners?
That's a great question. So, a couple years ago, we were introduced to the concept of an annual property review, right? Where we would pull specific metrics, property value increase, rent collected, maintenance cost over the course of the year, put it together in a small snapshot in a spreadsheet, and then have a 15 to 20-minute conversation with our owners each year. We did that for 1 year and it was successful, but we got away from it, right? Just because of life, right? But just recently, I was at a little summit of property management mastermind in Oklahoma City, and we were introduced to this software solution called Blanket.
Yep.
And part of this solution is that you have all these metrics and things that you're tracking within this dashboard. So I've just recently introduced that to my BDM, and the intention is for my BDM to have those performance review conversations on an annual basis with our clients
Okay.
in hopes, one, customer retention, but two, getting our clients to purchase and acquire additional
Yep.
investments because of the success they're seeing with their investment properties.
Okay.
So I see the value in it. I know that it's there, but we're still very early on in being able to leverage Blanket in order to really focus on those performance reviews and acquire some more properties.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So let's take a step outside the business. Okay, just for a quick second here. One thing that I always find an interesting topic for business owners is what are you doing? Like property management's a cash flow business, right? What are you doing with that excess cash flow? Where do you invest your money? How do you spend that money? Type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, is it all going back into real estate investments? Obviously, you need your money for your personal life as well. But
Yeah.
let's say any investing, or is it all real estate? What does that look like?
So really over the past 12 months, it's been two specific areas. One of them has been this real estate investment group that me and three other property managers started. So we started to acquire properties as a group, and we're still learning how to really focus on that, right? We've started to explore some development opportunities, which is ultimately what I'd love to get into. So I've got some funds tied up within that group with some acquisitions that we have in play and some
It
development opportunities we're
is
looking
that
at.
group you and those three other partners, or
Yeah.
are you taking
Yeah.
outside capital? What is?
So what we decided to do is we decided to invest our capital first and
Okay.
really build the process out and make sure we've identified some good projects and investments that we want to pursue before we open it up. We've got a small list of guys that are people that have come to us and said, "Hey, I'm interested in investing with you when the time is right." But we haven't taken any projects to that outside list quite yet. That's the intention, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet. And then the second piece that I'm really investing my time and capital into right now is a maintenance company. So when I started and I got into Key Renter, I realized that there was a huge opportunity both on the management side for monthly recurring revenue and then the transactional side that could really just be a self-sufficient monster, right? With the maintenance side of the business and then the traditional real estate brokerage. So last year I partnered with a great friend of mine and a local contractor who we opened Richmond Property Maintenance Pros. So just last week, we actually hired our first project manager after having a few technicians on payroll. So I'm really, really excited about that. We broke down some numbers, and about 80% of the work orders coming through Key Renter Richmond now are being managed by our maintenance company.
Okay.
So it's absolutely self-sufficient. It's a beautiful process right now. So those are the two primary investments that I've got. I also, on the personal side, my wife and I built a home last year. So that was that ate she's got some beautiful taste. So
Awesome.
that took a little bit of capital on the side.
That's the fruits of your labor, though. You get to now live in a beautiful home, I'm sure. So that's
Yep.
I'm sure you'll enjoy that investment quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Very cool. That maintenance company right now, are you guys like is the goal to also take on like third parties that need maintenance, or is it strictly to service Key Renter Property Management Richmond?
So I'd say right now, Richmond Property Maintenance Pros is managing 80% of key renters' work orders, but we've got two other property management companies that are pretty regularly sending over work orders.
Okay.
And just organic traffic came in because my partner has been in this space for so long that they still have referrals that are just coming over to him. That's why we needed to hire that project manager.
Okay.
So the goal is to absolutely scale it to where we can support other property management companies. I'm very process driven, process oriented. And what I've found in my experience with working with a lot of local vendors and contractors is they love to do the work, but on the actual business side, the operation side, at times that can be a little lacking. So I've put a huge emphasis on software behind the scenes, collecting work orders, having remote team members manage those work orders, communicate out and coordinate scheduling. So the hope is that through my experience with Key Renter, that transitions over to the Richmond Property Maintenance Pros side, and that workflow and that process can be extremely simple for property management companies that are looking for solid long-term vendor partnerships.
Got it. Awesome. Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. On the subject of remote team members, you mentioned that you have three right now for Key Renter, Prop Imagine Richmond. What are some of the, let's say, daily tasks that they handle for your business? And how has that kind of opened things up for you guys?
Yeah. So my remote team members, they're an absolutely critical part of the team, man. They have phenomenal personalities. What they invest in this business in terms of time and the way they handle their responsibilities is unbelievable. So we've got leasing support, we've got a maintenance coordinator, and then we've got tech support. So on the leasing side, their primary responsibilities are engaging with lead inquiries that come in through our leasing at keyrenterrichmond.com email. They process applications and they do the communication for move-in and lease renewals, where our leasing agent actually executes those contracts and handles any escalations that pop up.
Okay.
Our tech support, for example, we just transitioned to a new rental analysis tool on our website. So he ran point on that project. He also, anything that pops up, we leverage Process Street to an extremely heavy degree. So he's always tweaking and adjusting little pieces within Process Street to make sure our move in, our move out, our onboarding workflows are all working the way that we should. And then our maintenance coordinator is just constantly in Appfolio, troubleshooting work order requests that come in, dispatching vendors, onboarding new vendors, collecting any details or information from vendors that we need to make sure that, we've got all their insurance documents and, we've got their business licenses and everything on file here. And we would not be able to run the way that we do without our remote team members. They are an absolutely critical part of the team.
How did you come into contact with them? Like, where did you go to find them?
Yeah, so one came through Key Renter.
Okay.
So I was just when I was, I think one day I was just bashing my head against the wall with property management because that can happen so often pretty early on. And somebody said, "Hey, it sounds like you could really benefit from having a remote team member." So I said, how do I do this? Where do I get one? How can I be introduced to somebody?" And so I reached out to Key Renter Corporate, and they had a process in place for collecting applications. So
Okay.
I set up a couple interviews and hired one. And then I I don't know the second one that I hired just shot me an email one day and said, "Hey, I'm looking for work. Here's my resume." So
Okay.
replied, scheduled
Just
a
just randomly like came through the
yeah,
website. Everything.
yeah. I mean, I get
Okay.
them once or twice a week, every couple of weeks. One will come through that says, "Hey, I'm a virtual team member, just
Yep.
looking for, looking for some work. And I scheduled a Google Meet and I loved him. He was hysterical. He had the right experience that I was looking for. And then
Cool.
I asked him if he knew of anybody else. So he said, yeah. And I was introduced to my third remote team member from the second one I brought on the team.
Got it. Are they all from Latin America? From
No, so we have one down in Mexico, then we have two in Pakistan.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy. Like at Upkeep back in 2015 when we started, uh, for us everything we do is digital. So for us, our team is literally located around the globe. We have a lot in Canada as well, but basically remote team members at that time was not something that you saw in property management at all.
Right.
So it's been very interesting to see over the last probably I'd say 5 years
Yeah.
how it's really started to become a regular team member for most property management companies, and just seeing the value of hiring people that aren't necessarily located physically where you are, but they can still do the work of somebody that is actually in the United States.
Right.
So yeah, it's awesome.
Critical part of the team.
Yeah. So if you were to go back in time, okay, so we were going back to 2017, you're opening your company. What is the one thing you would do that you believe would have the biggest impact on helping you succeed at a quicker rate?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and a couple thoughts that came to mind were hire a PM earlier, hire a BDM earlier, focus on my vendor network, standardizing my pricing and services. But the one that sticks out above the rest, in my opinion, would be hiring a BDM. I was in sales for so long that I just took ownership of that and I thought I'm the only one that's going to be able to do this. But
Mm-hmm.
now I see and realize that they're absolute. I mean, my team right now is exponentially better at what they do than what I was. And being able to outsource that business development management role and really focus on the operations of the business and standardizing that pricing and services and standardizing the training and the support that I would have been able to provide that PM while not focusing on the sales. And that to me would have grown my business faster and allowed me to focus on the process pieces and the support pieces that have created this foundation that I've got right now. So hands down, after thinking about it, after working through it and having many years of this property management experience, I think it's definitely the BDM piece that I would have hired as soon as it made financial sense to do so.
Got it. So getting yourself out of sales so you can focus on everything, bigger picture. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And you can make an argument for anything else I mentioned there, but in my opinion, the BDM piece was absolutely a swing and a miss on my end.
I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. I think as a business owner, you kind of got to know what your own strengths are and where you'd be the most valuable for your company. So I don't think, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think that different answers are right and different answers are wrong for different folks.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's probably the first person I've had tell me though that had a background in sales that their first hire should have been a salesperson. So it's interesting to hear you say that, just knowing what your background was though.
yeah.
Cool. So any departing words of advice for other property management company owners that are out there that are, looking to grow, looking to improve their operations?
Yeah. A few come to mind. And the first one is don't quit, keep pushing. This business is beautiful. It's challenging, it's difficult. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with people's homes, you're dealing, as you mentioned, with in a lot of cases the highest value asset that people own. And there are a lot of emotions that come along with that, right? There's a lot of different challenges, a lot of different issues that pop up, but it is absolutely worth it from a financial perspective, from a growth perspective, from being able to support my team and building those relationships with the team that I have and the team that I work with. It's extremely fulfilling. I mean, I absolutely love this business and what it's given me, what it's provided for my family. So never quit, keep pushing, find other property managers, find coaches. There's enough support out there to help you be as successful as you want to be. Set standards and keep them, right? Um, don't don't fall victim to creating expectations for every person that comes through the door. You know what works, stick with it, right? Try new things, right? Don't be opposed to trying new things, but set your standards, have a valid reason for it, create value in the standards that you have for your clients, but keep them, stick to them. If you do that, you're going to be able to set better expectations with tenants, vendors, clients, and your internal team members, and things are just going to run smooth. And then the one that I've learned since I've started scaling is hire slow and fire fast. I heard people say that on numerous occasions, and I never wanted to be the bad guy. Never wanted to be the guy that said he made a mistake, right? But now I realize that take your time, have a process for hiring people, make the right choice up front. And if for some reason you end up making the wrong choice, make the adjustment quickly. It's going to be better for the person that you hired or that you're firing in whatever case. And it's going to be the best for your company, your clients, your vendors, your tenants. Trust your gut, hire slow, fire fast.
Awesome. That's some good advice. Appreciate it so much, Calvin.
Yeah,
Hopefully, whoever's listening to this learns a lot. I know I have. And thank you so much for your time.
absolutely, my man. Appreciate you.